Welcome back to Adventures in Blockchain. I'm Gregory from DAP University, and I'm here with my co-panelists today, Roman and Bruno, and also a special guest, Johann from Chainlink, which is an exciting new project that I'm really excited to talk about. All right. So if you're new to the podcast, it's a podcast all about blockchain development. We're a developer-focused podcast, and we like to do a lot of different things. We talk about topics pertaining to blockchain development, but we also have really cool guests on the channel like Johann today, who is working on a really cool product that I'm excited to chat about. All right. So welcome to the podcast, Johann.
Hey, Gregory. Thanks for having me.
Awesome. Yeah, we've got our co-panelists, Roman and Bruno here. They're going to be chiming in, asking questions. So really quickly, tell me your elevator pitch, right, for what you guys do over at Chainlink, because this is, a project that has gotten a huge spike in attention lately. And, I want to know why, and kind of tell us what you guys are doing over there.
For sure. Yeah, so to explain Chainlink, it's easier to go back to the definition of smart contracts and their utility. So smart contracts are a form of digital agreements that's deterministic and self-executes, which means whenever you get the right triggers, your contract will execute and you'll get the output you are expecting. Now, these properties in the real world have huge value. Just imagine if you had insurance contracts which would auto-execute without having to do the settlement, without having to take proofs for everything, just imagine you have derivatives contracts which auto-executed and which were super reliable. That's a great value prop for enterprises, right?
Right.
But currently, to do this on the blockchain, you need data. You need outside data, real-world data. And the current blockchains, such as Ethereum, such as, Tezos, Cosmos, all these blockchains, they don't have access to this outside data. They only have access to on-chain data, which is secured by consensus and which is the only reliable data on the blockchain. So how do you get data onto the blockchain? Well, you create oracles. And these oracles will have to fetch data from the real world, from API endpoints, and feed this data to smart contracts. And the gist of it is that these oracles are not part of the consensus mechanism. They are a third party. So you have to trust them in some way. You have to make sure that this data that's coming into your smart contract is reliable, is secure, and that the actors which are providing it have the right incentive to provide the right data. So that's what we are doing at Chainlink. We are building a decentralized oracle network, which ensures that these oracles which are feeding you data are as reliable and as secure as possible.
Right, totally. Yeah, that's a great explanation. So for anyone that's, new to the blockchain space, let's just kind of clarify that a little bit, right? So, Johann was talking about smart contracts being, this amazing mechanism that can exist on the blockchain that, it's basically code that is going to work every time. And it models a real world contract, like this insurance settlement. But the problem is, how do you know that an event happened, right? How do you know that, this event that, caused this insurance contract to be called even really happened? So you need data from the real world. And this is a problem on the blockchain. So let's kind of dig into that just a little bit. You mentioned it from a high level, but since we were talking to developers here, like, why can't you just make an API call from a smart contract?
Well, you need a piece of middleware first. So this piece of middleware is an oracle. Now,
right.
Spinning up an oracle is not too hard, right? You can have a centralized oracle which will feed data into your smart contract. Now, the issue with having one single centralized oracle is that it's a single point of failure. Now, the reason we want to use smart contracts is because they are safe, they are deterministic, right? They have super nice properties. But whenever you introduce a centralized oracle into your system, then you are making a much weaker architecture where you have in the middle a super piece, like a super secure piece of computation, which is your smart contract, which is secured by hundreds of nodes, which are decentralized across the world, and which are doing computation from everywhere. And then you have one centralized oracle, which is feeding you data. Now, that's quite absurd, right? You don't want your oracle, you don't want your smart contract, which is super secure, to be triggered by something which is super insecure, such as a centralized oracle. So that's the reason why Chainlink has said to create this decentralized Oracle network, because we assume that the people who will be using smart contracts in the future will want end-to-end reliability in their architecture. So what we are doing is making this decentralized Oracle network as safe as the smart contract itself. So we want the data that it's provided to be as safe as the smart contract, which is being triggered by this data.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome. That's a great explanation. So I've heard recently that you all have some involvement with Google. Can you tell us anything about that and like what Google is interested in about blockchain?
Yeah, definitely. So I think Google, as a data provider, is very interested in the potential of blockchain technology in the future to host, to take away a huge part of the digital agreements market. So basically, Google, like many companies, probably believes that smart contracts have some great qualities and that they will probably become one of the widest adopted form of digital agreements in the future. And for this reason, Google chose to get involved into blockchain technology, and they chose to work with Chainlink in order to create an adapter which would allow to get data from Google's BigQuery service into the blockchain. So what this means in the future is that people using smart contracts, so smart contract creators, will be able to leverage Google's BigQuery directly into their smart contract by using Chainlink as a bridge.
Yeah, very cool. That's awesome. So what, are you guys using Chainlink in production with any projects that we might have heard of?
So currently we're working with a multitude of projects to get them to start using Chainlink on mainnet. Now we have a big number of people who are working and who are interested in integrating us. So a number of integrations are currently underway, and they will be announced in the coming weeks. But what's sure is that we are currently on mainnet. We currently have a big number of Oracle nodes supporting our network, which means that these nodes are able to provide data to smart contracts. So all the architecture is set up. We've just been live for a few weeks, so it takes a bit of time to get all these guys ready on mainnet and using our product, but it's going to come very fast. And we believe that the first players to get using Chainlink will probably be not the hardest, but the one which will take the longest time. Whenever we start using, getting 1 or 2 dApps using Chainlink, then we'll see that, everyone will see basically that Chainlink is a great system which feeds you data, which is super reliable, and which is probably one of the leading solution on the market. So we expect people to start using us at an exponential rate, basically.
Yeah, very cool. That's awesome. So maybe can you tell me about some success stories with this already, or maybe some success stories that you see happening in the near future, as far as just like use cases for the service itself?
Yeah, for sure. So I would say that currently the DeFi dApps, which have kind of announced that they would be using Chainlink, such as Synthetic, such as Ampleforce, we are quite proud of this success because DeFi is one of the sectors that we kind of want to get using Chainlink. We kind of reckon that currently DeFi is not as decentralized as it claims, right? And
right.
We believe that oracles are a main part of this problem. Currently, a lot of these oracles that are being used in DeFi dApps are more or less centralized. And so we believe we have a great alternative to these problems. Of course, Google was a huge I wouldn't say success story, but I would say a big win for us because it showed that our approach was probably the right one. If someone like Google starts using us, then it's for good reasons, right? It means they did their research and they probably assumed that we were the leading players there. So yeah, we have a number of collaborations and of people we are working with that we are quite proud of, and we can expect that this number will continue rising as people start using us more and more, and that the network develops more and more. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. So, you mentioned, decentralized finance. So, just in case, anyone is kind of curious about what all that entails, like what are some use cases of decentralized finance? Like what are people doing? Are they trading on decentralized cryptocurrency exchanges? Is it just for, holding funds in their wallet? And why do they need an oracle for something like this?
They're doing a lot of stuff. It's kind of the Far West right now, which is nice to
Sure.
see. So they're doing lending, borrowing, derivatives, exchanges, of course, stable coins with MakerDAO. So you have so many kind of use cases for DeFi. I think the main use cases right now are really kind of derivative, stable coin, that has been one of the biggest use cases we've seen recently. They need oracles in order to get the price of, let's say, ETH USD onto
Mhm.
their dApps. So without these prices, like ETH USD is just an example, but they might need Forex prices later on. They might need BTC USD prices, So all these prices need to be fed into their smart contracts because, as we were saying, the only data they have available on chain is the data that's from the consensus. So maybe the nonce from the blocks and this type of stuff. It's not going to get you very far. So they need the data from the real world, and for this they need oracles. And the way they implement these oracles is very, very important in order to avoid issues such as having one oracle, like let's say one of these derivatives platform, was using one single centralized oracle. What would happen to their whole system if the oracle was to go down or was to get attacked maliciously, and then it fed the wrong data to the smart contract? Then they
Right.
could lose money, right? Like people could lose huge amounts of money. And currently it's a small space, but we claim to be able to disrupt the whole financial system, right? Well, there is no way the financial system is going to move to a platform where you have smart contracts which auto-trigger, and these smart contracts which are auto-triggering, which means you have no recourse if something goes bad, are being triggered by something which is centralized and unreliable, right? So
Right.
that's why you need decentralized oracle.
Yeah, totally. That's awesome. So,
Right.
yeah, go ahead.
So, I just have a quick question. Johan, you mentioned that having a decentralized oracle is the way to go. But does that mean that the Chainlink, for example, it works in the same way as a blockchain? For example, does it have a consensus algorithm, or what makes it decentralized?
Yeah, great question. It's indeed with consensus. So currently, when you have Ethereum, for instance, where you have multiple nodes across the world, and each of these nodes has a state of the blockchain, right? And each of these nodes will kind of put its state of the blockchain, which it believes it's true, uh, to its peers, and they will all reach a consensus on what the true state is,
Mm-hmm.
Well, currently it's very similar with Chainlink nodes. Every node has a kind of state of the data that it's going to feed to the smart contract. This data is aggregated, so through consensus, and we get one single data point to use on the smart contract. So it's very similar to the Ethereum mechanism or Bitcoin mechanism. Just replace state by data point, and that's it.
Awesome. That's very interesting. So, can you tell us about the consensus algorithm that you use?
Yeah, so we can aggregate this data. So it's not going to be a consensus mechanism such as BFT or stuff like this, right? It's going to be aggregation, so the person creating the smart contract will decide on the weight that node operators will have. So a node operator might be more reputable than another one, so he'll decide to have more weight than the other. And then he'll decide on what kind of aggregation he wants. So it can be average, it can be median, so you can have multiple sorts.
Awesome. That's really cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We believe it offers a lot of kind of freedom to developers to go with the approach they are the more comfortable with, and they believe is the most secure.
Yeah, very cool. Awesome. Thanks for that. So, you mentioned earlier that you saw, Chainlink potentially, growing exponentially in the future. What does that path look like for you all? And, where do you see, just what does that look like?
Yeah, definitely. So I think Chainlink will probably grow as the smart contract and the blockchain ecosystem grows. So it's very obvious that smart contracts will need real world data in order to function. And it's also real obvious if you look ahead enough that smart contracts will probably become the leading form of digital agreements in the future because the guarantees they offer are so much better than what currently exists in the market, right?
Yeah.
So what we can say is that Chainlink will probably be the gateway for smart contracts to get data from every API endpoint that's imaginable in the future. And the way it looks like is currently we are still, a very small industry, right? However, Chainlink will probably start growing by getting more and more people to work with. And once we got more people, they'll see what a nice system we've created, that we are creating real standards for the blockchain industry. And progressively, we get more usage as we get more adoption for smart contracts, right? So that's the way it will go.
Yeah, totally. So you see Chainlink as, an organization to help spread the adoption of blockchain and smart contract uses.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So as smart contracts grow and as our industry grows, they need real-world data in order to function, and Chainlink will provide this real-world data.
Awesome. Yeah, very cool.
So you said that Chainlink is here to help the adoption of blockchains and make it easier to work with blockchains and achieve our goals. Can you tell us more about what are the blockchains that Chainlink integrates to or relates to?
Yeah, definitely. So currently we are live on mainnet on Ethereum only. However, we are planning to work with a bunch of other blockchains. So we want to support the main platforms. So currently we are working with Polkadot, we are working with Hedera Hashgraph, we are working with a big number of blockchains, probably too many to say now. So yeah, we really are not very we want to support any platform which shows value in our eyes and we believe could get adoption in later stages. That's it. So we are blockchain agnostic.
Awesome. That's really cool. And what about the other side? Say I'm a developer, I want to use Chainlink. Do I need to use a specific language or framework, or do you support just anything?
Yeah, definitely. So Solidity developers. So currently Chainlink will be integrated into smart contracts, right? So on Ethereum, it's only Solidity. We created some very easy to use classes in order to easily implement Chainlink functions. So for instance, if you want to get to create a request, you just do build Chainlink request, and you send the right arguments. We made it super easy and intuitive for developers to build. We created a kind of Solidity framework, which makes it incredibly high level to create requests and to send a request to data provider, to oracles. Yeah.
Let's say I have an idea for an oracle, and I would like a Chainlink to process this data for me. How does a new developers can ask Chainlink to support the Oracle API or something like that? How does it work?
Yeah, awesome question. So we are a permissionless network, right? So you really don't have to ask us anything. Now, what you can do in order to support this API, which might not be supported yet, is create a personal adapter for this API. So we call it an external adapter, which will allow to fetch data from this API. And if the right node operators support it, so you just have to talk directly to node operators, then you'll be able to get this data. So first, build this adapter and then get the right people to support this adapter.
Is there a way to reach out to validators?
So we have a few on Discord. We have a few on Telegram. So yeah, it will be very, by social channels. And you can also see all the validators which are currently on mainnet on our website.
Awesome. Do you plan to have some sort of maybe API-driven way for validators to fetch the new oracles, or new adapters? I mean, let's say if I wrote an adapter and I say I would like validators to process such request in a certain way, can I just post it somewhere so the validators can automatically provide this kind of oracle?
Oh, I see. Okay. So that will probably be a service agreement where the smart contract creator will ask to get data in a certain way. So for instance, every 5 minutes, I want this data fetched from this website. So we call this a service agreement. Yeah. And definitely it's implemented. Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. So, you mentioned that you all are, currently supporting Ethereum out of the box. You essentially have kind of like a software developer kit, like a SDK almost for Ethereum Solidity smart contracts. If the developers want to check this out, how can they get started? Where can they find it? Do you guys have guides, documentation, stuff like that?
Yeah, definitely. So we have the Chainlink documentation. You just type Chainlink documentation or head over to our website and you'll see directly. And we have examples for smart contract creators to easily implement our logic into their smart contracts. We have also tutorials for multiple tutorials. So it should be very easy for people to get started with Chainlink. We also have a Gitter channel and a Discord where we answer questions and where we can help on the technical side whenever. So it's really not that hard to get started using Chainlink.
Awesome. Very cool. So, we got a lot of developers listening to this podcast, right? And so there's an opportunity for you all to ask for help from the development community. Is there anything that we can do to, chip in and support your all's vision and progress?
Well, I think the best way to do it is really we want to grow organically, right? So I think anyone who is kind of building a smart contract that requires real world data should take a look at Chainlink. We've really built an easy framework for developers to use us. And we're also building a system which is secure and decentralized and reliable, right? So if you want to do things clean and in the blockchain way, just choose Chainlink. And I think as long as everyone is kind of spreading this message, I would say, which is that hey, there is a really nice, Oracle system which is solving a real-world problem to get blockchain adoption, then we should be on the right track.
Awesome. Very cool. So I got another question for you. You guys did a lot of hard work to get this project started. Tell me about the hardest problem that you all have solved that's made Chainlink really valuable. Is it really just the getting the data in a reliable way? What challenges have you had to overcome in order to do that?
Yeah, I think there are multiple challenges that we've overcome and that we still need to overcome. There is a lot of stuff in, decentralized Oracle network. There is a lot of game theory, incentive mechanisms, which it implies, right? So there is a lot of stuff under the hoods that we still need to solve. Now, I would say something that we are really doing, I would say, very well, and where we're creating a standard is creating a piece of middleware which can connect to any API endpoint in the world. That's not a very easy task, right? You need to create something that's modular enough to connect to any kind of possible data that could be kind of fetched from every system in the world, right? So that's not a trivial task, and we've built something modular enough to be able to do it. So that's really a challenge I think we can be proud of achieving.
Awesome. Very cool. So Roman, I think, has one more question here.
Do you see? Yeah, I have a question about we just recorded a previous podcast episode about passive income opportunities in blockchain. So I'm wondering if there are ways that you can see for developers to build some solutions on Chainlink that will enable them to have some sort of passive income. Do you know any of them?
Yeah, I mean, I would say mostly node operators will probably start earning income if they have the right reputation, if they have kind of the right system in place. Then they'll probably get a lot of attention from smart contract creators and will start getting requests for data for their nodes. So node operator who has a great reputation, who's providing multiple data sources and who has a big number of nodes running, so it's secure and it's providing multiple data points. Then they'll probably get a large shift of requests from dApps, and these requests will allow them to get paid whenever they fulfill these requests, right? So it's an economic system. So smart contract creators need data. They send requests to node operators, and these node operators fulfill these requests and get paid in exchange.
Yeah,
That's
very cool.
Awesome. Yeah.
Yeah, totally. I think that's a really cool way. So, we talked about this as a passive income source. I mean, how active actually would something like this be? Because it sounds like, you're trying to get people to use your data source, and, is there going to be kind of maintenance and upkeep as far as adding new data sources and stuff like that?
Yeah, so I think it's very similar to being a validator on other networks with some twerks also, like with some differences. So here you're not guaranteed to earn income. However, you kind of you have to compete between multiple node operators. So the node operator which has the biggest reputation, which has the best architecture, like these node operators, which are the most reliable, will get the most data, the most requests. Sorry. And so it's really a free market system where if you're putting in the work, so that will probably be some work since you have to spin up multiple nodes, to be as secure as possible, since you may want to create some adapters to kind of, provide more data than the competition, so it will probably require some work. However, if you are one of the node operators, which in the future is powering the smart contract economy, then this work will probably be worth it, right? Like just imagine if all the enterprises start using blockchain and smart contracts, and you're one of the node operators servicing the data they need, then it's probably, worth the work.
Sure. Yeah, totally. So there'll be some work involved, but it'd be well worth your time.
I would say this, yeah.
I have a question. Do you have any slashing conditions for validators if they misbehave or provide incorrect data?
Yeah, great question, actually. Yeah. So in this sense, we are kind of similar to a staking system where in the future, node operators might be asked by smart contract creators to put up a security deposit, so to stake some of their link tokens. And if they have very low uptime, or if their data they provide is too different from the data of their peers. So basically, we find out that they're malicious in some way, or that they are not being serious, they're bad node operators, they might get slashed. Yeah. So we will have slashing and staking in the future. Yeah.
Well, yeah, that's awesome. Well, Johann, this has been a great conversation. Before we start, winding things down, is there anything else that you want everyone listening to know about Chainlink or where you're headed? Like, is there any takeaways that we haven't covered yet?
I think we asked the most important questions, and really the main takeaway for developers, for your audience, would be to kind of give it a try. So really, we are still at the beginning of this industry, the beginning of this technology, and Chainlink is offering some prospects which weren't really possible before. So you have some really cool stuff like being able to track the delivery of packages, or like being able to track, flights in real time. like you can do so much stuff with Chainlink, so many innovative systems and compiling systems. I would really encourage developers to give it a try, to go into our documentation, to go into our Discord, and start, building Chainlink dApps. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. And they can get started with the resources that you mentioned before, your documentation and your guides. So we're going to put some links to those down in the video notes as well. The podcast notes. But yeah, Johann, this has been a great conversation. I know I've learned a lot about Chainlink. I'm excited to get my hands dirty and, start building things with Chainlink. Thanks again for coming on to the podcast. If people want to learn more about, you or Chainlink, or, are you on social media? Is Chainlink on social media? You mentioned the Discord channel, but are there any other resources that they can find?
Yeah, definitely. So definitely follow us on Twitter. We have a Telegram, we have a Reddit to start, getting along with the community. We have a Discord. So we have all of this stuff. And if they want to learn more about us, we have a large array of YouTube videos. We have our documentation. And of course, anyone is free to reach out to us, and we answer very fast usually. Yeah.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, again, thanks for coming on the podcast today, Johann. It's been a great episode. I'm going to go ahead and call this one for today. So everybody, go check out Chainlink. Go check out those resources in the podcast description. All right. Until next time, thanks so much for listening to Adventures in Blockchain.
Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CacheFly.com.